In every courtroom, justice is promised. But for thousands of men and women around the world, that promise was broken. They were declared guilty, yet they were innocent. Justice is supposed to be blind, balanced, fair, but for thousands of people across the world, justice looked directly at them and still got it wrong. They were arrested, accused, tried, convicted, not because they were guilty, but because the system failed. Every prison holds stories we may never hear. Stories of men and women who lost years, sometimes decades, behind bars for crimes they did not commit. This is not a story of one man. It is a story of a broken process. These are the stolen years. A wrongful conviction doesn't require evil intent, only human error combined with power. A wrongful conviction occurs when an innocent person is found guilty of a crime and punished for it. It sounds impossible, yet it happens far more often than we want to believe. Since the introduction of DNA testing, hundreds of convicted prisoners, some on death row, have been proven innocent. The causes are disturbingly familiar. Eyewitnesses who were mistaken, confessions forced under pressure, evidence that was misinterpreted or deliberately hidden. The justice system is operated by humans, and humans make mistakes. But when mistakes are backed by authority, uniforms, and court seals, the consequences are devastating. Glenn Ford was 34 years old when he was sentenced to death in Louisiana. There was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. No fingerprints, no DNA. What convicted him was unreliable testimony and a system eager to close a case. Glenn Ford spent 30 years on death row, waiting to die for a crime he did not commit. Every morning, he woke up not knowing if that day would be his last. In 2014, prosecutors finally admitted the truth. Glenn Ford was innocent. He walked out of prison a free man. But freedom came too late. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer shortly after his release. 1 year later, Glenn Ford was dead. The state took his life, even without executing him. Glenn Ford walked out of prison a free man, only to die a year later from cancer. Freedom came too late. Michael Morden was convicted of murdering his wife in 1986. Prosecutors painted him as a cold and violent husband. The jury believed them. What the jury never knew was that crucial evidence was hidden. Evidence showing his innocence. Evidence pointing to another man. Michael Morden spent 25 years in prison. While he sat behind bars, the real killer went free, and killed again. When DNA testing was finally allowed, the truth was undeniable. Michael Morden was innocent. Justice delayed had not only destroyed one life, but cost another. When evidence is hidden, justice becomes a weapon. A confession is often seen as the strongest proof of guilt. But what if that confession was never true? The Central Park Five were teenagers when they were accused of a brutal crime in New York City. After hours of interrogation, without lawyers or parents, they confessed. But those confessions were lies born from fear, exhaustion, and pressure. Years later, DNA evidence proved they were innocent. The real attacker confessed. The teenagers lost 13 years of their lives. Fear can sound like guilt, and silence can look like confession. Under pressure, fear can sound like guilt. In the digital age, shocking stories travel fast. Some are true, others are not. Stories like a man imprisoned for decades while his wife was secretly alive capture attention, but often collapse under scrutiny. False stories thrive because real injustice already feels unbelievable. But the truth does not need exaggeration. Real wrongful convictions are already tragic enough. Some stories really shock us because they feel true, but truth requires evidence. Exoneration is not the end of suffering. For many, it is the beginning of a new struggle. Former prisoners walk out with no savings, no work history, no support system. Relationships are broken. Families have moved on. The world they return to no longer recognizes them. Freedom does not heal trauma. It only removes the bars. Freedom doesn't erase the past. It only begins a new struggle. Wrongful convictions are not accidents. They are warnings. Warnings that justice must be careful, transparent, accountable. Evidence must be shared. Interrogations must be recorded. Science must be respected. Because every conviction carries a human cost. Somewhere tonight, an innocent person is waiting behind bars. Waiting for truth. Waiting for justice. Waiting for their stolen years to end. Justice is not just about punishment. It is about truth. And truth must never be rushed.